So I welcome all the dignitaries, all the panelists on the Higher and Technical Education Virtual Conclave North India. And I welcome Mr. Hemant Sahel, founder and CEO of Mr. Colpol. He will be moderating the next session. And I would like to welcome Mr. Sahil Agarwal, co-founder and CEO, Rishi Hood University from Haryana. Welcome, Sahil sir. Welcome on board at Higher Technical Education Conclave. I welcome Dr. Madhu Chitkara, Pro Chancellor from Chitkara University. She is live from directly from Punjab right now. Welcome, Madhu ma'am. Welcome on the Higher Technical Education Conclave. And I welcome Kaur Sekhar Vijendra, the Chancellor, Soviet University, Meerut. Hi, Kaur sir.
Hello, Abhishek.
Hi, sir. Welcome, welcome on the Higher Technical Education. Sir, can you switch on your webcam also?
Yeah, there seems to be some issue. I'm putting it on.
Okay, no issue, sir. Once it's on, sir, tell me. And I welcome Dr. Pankaj Mittal, Secretary General, Association of Indian Universities. I think she might be joining. And I welcome Sudhanshu Verma, Chief Operating Officer, Bennett University, Greater Noida. Hi, Sudhanshu, sir. How are you doing, sir? Welcome to Higher Technical Education. So as soon Pankaj ma'am will join, I just request Hemant sir to take over this and start the panel.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Wow. This is like a panel which I would definitely dream of. We have Madhu madam, we have Kuwar sir, we have Sahil here, Sudhanshu, and Mr. Chaturvedi. A lot of known faces, people I really look up to and I follow and I see what's going on in the industry, in the education space. So I welcome all the panelists to the session. The idea to kickstart today's conclave with this panel is to set the context for the coming panels, to have the larger context set and share specific issues, have views of all the education leaders on specific issues that institutions are thinking about. So personally, my idea of the panel would be to start from admissions and gradually get into the placement side and give insights to our audience on every aspect of education in context of what COVID has pushed us into. So one of the biggest challenges today institutions are facing is how will admissions happen? The affiliated colleges are thinking that our common entrance tests of the states have not been conducted. So how will students approach us? Private universities are not able to conduct their entrance tests or entrance examinations. And the scores of the students in their the 12th class have been quite, I would say, different than how we would have expected. A lot more percentages of students. So there's no way you can just go by percentage. And I was giving an example to Abhishek just some time back that how, if this would have happened in my time, I would have not got admission in most of the universities because marks in 12th were very low. But I cracked CBSE PMT. I was in top 50 or top 100 of a lot of university examinations in my time. So, but if the test wouldn't have happened, I would have not even got admission. So I would like to, pose this question and start with the, Madhu madam. And I hope by then Kuwar sir's video issue is resolved. That, ma'am, how should universities and institutions plan for admissions with so much of uncertainty?
Thank you, Hemant, and welcome all my co-panelists, and I welcome all of you. Come sometime to Punjab when the things are moving good. So if you're talking about the admissions, it is, you can say that it is a challenge. Of course, it's a challenge for private universities, especially in the private colleges. Reason being that we are not meeting them personally and they are not coming to our institutes. They are not seeing our infrastructure. So it's not possible for them to sue and to come. But what we have started doing is that, I think everybody has started doing is that we have given them the virtual tours of our campuses. and we put that videos, type of videos on our websites. And technology is used to the fullest. And Hemant, you know that we are working with you also, and I'm very happy that people like you, the young people like you, those who are very good in technology, has given us some great systems where we are making our systems very comfortable. If you see about the admissions, so on our websites, we have put all the forms. Then they can upload that. They can fill the forms. Then the counselings are done, that virtual counselings, and then offline mode. They are talking to our counselors because they're very worried about which course to go for. Because now seeing this scenario, they are very worried that whether go for a hospitality or not. So what, now for example, I'm a father and I'm a mother and I want my kids to be in hospitality. Now seeing this situation that now the hotel industry is in problem, so whether my child should go to that or not. So we are there to tell them through the telephone talks or through their interactions that it is not going to stay long, because it's a situation which we all are facing, but we have to wait another for 3-4 months. I think that things will be normal, a new normal will be there. So it's not that thing that admissions will be in problem. Maybe problem will be in the post-graduation courses, for example, the master's courses. Maybe they can say that they are not ready for the higher education courses. But if you see the graduation, if you see the engineering and other fields, the admission will not be a problem because it was happening already through that online mode. So it is because the students were coming to us not only from India but from other countries also. So they were not coming physical to our campus. They were doing it that online mode. So that will not be a problem, I think so.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll move on to Kuvar sir. Sir, there is a very critical question that has come of digital divide. That not everybody has access to smartphones. Not everybody has access to devices, internet. All. How are you driving? Because Shobit University caters to also a very large segment of students who come from rural areas, from tier 3 cities, and how are you planning to ensure that they are not deprived of the admissions because they cannot go physically now to for an admission counseling?
Yeah, thank you, Hemant, and thank you for this invitation to the organizers. As Dr. Chitkara was mentioning, so I will continue from there, that admissions will happen. And everybody was exploring online options even earlier, since last few years. However, this year it is more, we all are dependent on that. When we look at this digital divide, what you have asked, actually this digital divide is not only in India. And this divide is very alarming. Around 70% of youth globally is deprived of the right connectivity, equipment, or these facilities. As admissions are concerned, one, for especially if I talk about Shobit University, which is in a small rural town in district Saharanpur. One, luckily that this pandemic is not much there in villages, so movements are possible. Secondly, we are approaching our students through all those conventional or non-conventional ways so that they know about us. And this admission challenge will be there for new institutions more. I'm seeing Sahil sitting here. You have not to worry, you are a wonderful institution, because people do not know about them. But institutions, those who have a legacy, those who have a very strong alumni network, a word of mouth is there, people know, yes, they are good institutions, well-established institutions. Big challenges are not going to be there. And there are wonderful companies like yours, those who are helping us in fulfilling that digital divide is not there, and to approaching people around and conveying the message. So admission will be slow. It may extend for more to 2 months, but yes, admissions will be there. And there may be a different trend, people, those who are going for X branches. This year, I am seeing more towards agriculture, bioengineering branches, and areas which are related to biological technology, or all those areas I am seeing more scope is there, or life sciences. So that will remain there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So I'll just move to Sahil. Sahil, you are the startup in this, in the I would say the established. I look up to Rishihad University. I'm a fan of the communication and the branding that you've been doing. It's amazing. So I specifically want to hear from you. What startup hacks are you applying, which you can sort of pass that knowledge to the other institutions to make sure that the brand is not getting diluted or the communication is not getting interrupted just because you're not able to do, on the ground shows. So tell us, what hacks have you been doing which other institutions can take away?
Thank you, Hemant, and thank you, Kumarji, for those comments. And it's not not some hacks that we are doing. We are only learning from established institutions like Chitkara University and Shobit University. So given that this is our first year, most of our processes were online anyways. I mean, thanks to companies like you, our processes, all the admission process, from counseling to admissions to interviews, everything was online. So that has not been an issue in terms of the digital gap there. But what definitely is an issue is that, as you said, our branding was continuing, and then when we wanted to shift from branding to outreach, COVID hit us. So we didn't really got into an outreach activity. So probably we'll have to start the university without having done any outreach other than whatever is possible on social media. What we are able to do is that it's not a hack. It's a very simple thing that since we cannot go to schools and we cannot meet students physically, we cannot invite them to our campus. We are only focusing on digitally reaching out to them. So continuing the branding activities and also designing the admission process in a way which does not depend too much on their entrance exams. So if you see that there is a very clear divide between school and university, and this is linked to this entrance exam. And the way our entrance examination system is designed, I think there's a systemic flaw there. So unless we as a nation can review that design, because mass exams where millions of people are taking these board exams, JEE exams, till the time it is happening, we will have to rely on those. So although it's quite visible that JEE cannot happen this year, the government is only trying to delay it month by month. They're not still able to take a stand that no JEE this year, because we don't have an alternate given our large population. But I think that's not sustainable in the long run. We'll have to reach a stage where exams can be modular, on-demand basis, like we have SAT. So for example, NATA, the architecture body, did a review this year, and they've made their exam take home, which was the first time in their history. I think a lot of other these examination bodies will also have to think and plan in a way that students are not dependent on these mass one-time all exams.
So like a true startup, you have still not shared some of your hacks, so you're keeping it to yourself. So I'll move on to Sudhanshu. Sudhanshu, you've just, I think maybe Bennett, the best thing they did in the last 3-4 months was to get you onboarded as a chief operating officer, and this is really a tough time to get into operations of a university. And
so if my boss hears this, Hemant, if my boss hears this, I will catch you by your neck.
So my question is that institutions' operations are all up in the air, right? Institutions are not able to complete their final examinations and declare results, issue transcripts. A lot of that also means from a admission side, if you are offering higher education programs, you are not able to look at the getting students, because their results have not come. They can't take admission into postgraduate programs. And on the other side, a lot of on-ground activities where campuses have to be kept safe. Nobody is there. Still, you have to maintain the infrastructure. So I want to have your insights on how are you managing the operations at this moment? of a university which has got great infrastructure, which has got invested so much in different teams, which is known for residential programs. How is operations being managed, and what is your plan for the new semester?
Okay, so Hemant, let me put it into two parts. And before the two parts, let me say one dialogue, and I hope Akash actually sends me a recording of this, which especially your first part of saying, I'm a good guy to get in, so I can share it with my boss. Now, if you look at two parts, which primarily are the admission side on one side, and on the other side is the non-admissions, but everything to do with the infra, everything to do with the kind of things you point out, exams happening, not happening, tabulations being done. So I think we were one of the few early ones who actually completed all our exams of the continuing students internally, and it was well planned ahead of time. And we were able to complete close to about 16,500, 17,000 plus exams online. Right. So that part having done, there were teams which were working day in, day out to ensure that A, the exams were held properly, B, all the result tabulation was done in time, mark sheets created, sent out, etc., etc. On the other infra side of it, we actually started planning the whole thing, I would say, very early in May. So I love to call them chapters, because that is what the admin guy sent me. He says, sir, I'm sending you 18 chapters. So each chapter was actually related to the whole university setup being broken into different parts. You have labs on one side, you have classrooms, you've got cafeteria, you've got the admin part of it, you've got the classroom. So each of these and different activities related to it was broken into chapters, and we had SOPs drawn up for each of the chapters. And teams are very clear as to what is to be done, what is not to be done. To the extent we have a number of research projects going, live research projects going, a lot of them on the biotech side, which are very, very sensitive, and you can't keep on delaying them because then the cultures will die and all that kind of thing will happen. So there was a time when we were not allowing anyone onto the campus, but then steadily, once the SOPs were in place with strict adherence to all those protocols, we allowed that to happen. The project team was on it, all the maintenance and everything. So these are certain things, which only people who are running the university know about, and what kind of effort, investment, cost, and all goes into it. And I think most of the people here may agree with me that while a university is running on a regular basis, it gets done much easier. But when it's not on a running mode, and when you do it, your costs actually shoot up compared to what you would have managed during the running of a university. So having said that and taking care of that, where the teams are very responsible, and my hats off to the teams, the way they worked. I mean, there were people who were, despite all the worries of COVID, were on campus on a day-to-day basis. And there are people who, I think over the last 4 to 5 weeks, have not slept for more than 3-4 hours a day, just to ensure that things are getting into place. So that was done. On the admission side, so first of all, what I don't agree with what normally people say is the COVID crisis. It's not a crisis. And let's get over it. We've seen regular diseases, the normal ones, which have more deaths in a year across the world compared to what is happening on COVID. Second thing is on the entrance exams, which now you see on an everyday basis, some private university or the other announcing cancellation of entrance exams. So I look at entrance exams do only two things in life to anyone. One is entrance exam is an art. You need to crack an entrance exam. It's an art. It has nothing got to do with the knowledge that you have. I'm a very strong believer in that. Because if I didn't believe it, I would actually till date have been struggling to get into a university to study. The second thing which I totally don't believe about entrance exam is it is the best way to prove to a brilliant kid that he's a failure. Okay. Because that 1, 2 hour or a 3 hour time period in the kid's life cannot define whether the kid is good, bad, or ugly. And I absolutely don't believe in it. And I'm fortunate to work with a university where we yet do not have an entrance exam of that type. And I know, the results were declared late, and the way the results have been declared actually this time is fairly unfair to a lot of kids. Especially if you look at, there were a set of kids who actually gave the whole CBSE all the 5 papers. And then there were kids who gave 3 of them. There were kids who gave 4 of them. So if you compare to the child who's given all the 5 exams, it's in a way unfair, because he's going to get marked for every paper that he's given. While a kid who's only given 3, and by God's grace, if they happen to be the 3 strongest subjects for the kid, he gets the benefit of replicating those marks in the other 2. So that's why you see, there's this sudden jump of number of students getting 95% and above, number of students getting 90% and above, and all that. I think the bigger issue which all of us are facing, and please, all the panelists can feel free to tell me I'm wrong, but my guess is what all of us are facing today is this whole delay in the exams which the state universities or the specific central universities hold. You take the case of Delhi State Universities. Now they've suddenly cancelled final year exams. We don't know what's going to happen to the kids and their results, how it will impact them in their PG. A lot of them are still not decided as to are they going to do the entrance exam, are they not. Typical example being Delhi University. They have a BBA entrance and they have a BCA entrance. Now, when will that happen is post which the kid or the parent will decide whether he needs to go to a Delhi University college or whether he wants to go to, all of us sitting around over here to any of our universities. What I think is being missed is the big ticket thing, which is the panic and the worry, which is there in the mind of a parent and a student. And I think that is something which is being missed. And that is what I think Kunwarji was trying to say, that, if you look at it, so with an established university, they'll have an advantage. But the fact is, end of the day, the only 2 people who are suffering today are the parent and the child. And I've been through this over the last 2-3 years, given that my daughter is now getting into her second year. I mean, we were running around trying to do a physical check on various universities and all that, across the place, even while she had entered her 11th grade. And I'm sure Dr. Madhu would have gone through it during her times, and hopefully Sahil and others will go through it in their times to come. I think we need to have that sensibility and saying that as an educationist, my ultimate aim is to ensure that a child is able to live their dream. And the stepping stone to living that dream is what they're going to get into at this point of time in their higher education.
Right.
So that whole question which Dr. Madhu was trying to say, where parents come and believe that, should I enter into hotel management? Main IT mein jaun, main kya karun, what will happen? So COVID is going to become part of life over the next 1 year. Yeah. It doesn't mean that, industries will stop, will shut down and work won't happen. It will happen. So it's just up to us to be genuine about it to the parents. The more genuine we are, the more we look at it from the parents' angle and the students' angle, the better it will be for everyone.
Yeah. So that thanks, Sudhanshu. I think the answers, the thoughts coming from you were very detailed and in depth, and that makes me move on to Mr. Chaturvedi. You have multiple campuses, and I'm trying to make the questions more contextual. That you have multiple campuses, and there are a lot of other institutions. Can you share some best practices that you have brought in the last 3 months to deal with the challenge, and how are you preparing to start your new term? Specifically certain best practices so that people go away with some learning.
Right. Thank you, Hemant, and good afternoon to all the co-panelists, and thank you, ELITS, for giving us this opportunity. So I would just like to make one initial comment that in front of all of us as the higher education ecosystem stakeholders, there lies an opportunity to entirely re-envision and reimagine the higher education ecosystem in the pretext of the COVID crisis, which actually is not such a big crisis as Sudhanshu just pointed out. But we must seize this opportunity and bring to the priority the reforms and the technology and the autonomy aspects which everybody has been talking about in the past few years. Now, talking about our campuses, we are in a very typical position, as in our campuses lie all in tier 3 or some of them even below tier 3 locations. So in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Bihar and Jharkhand, and we typically deal with 80% rural students. Now, having said that, the responses which we have brought in the last 4 months and 5 months, and I would like to talk about 4 or 5 key trends or the learnings, as you've said. First of all, there was a short-term response from everybody, not just us, but everybody in the ecosystem. That involved laying hand on whatever technology we could, just with the objective of making the engagement of with the students continue, and also utilizing the faculty and the good trainers who were all sitting at home. So there were classes happening on Zoom, there were classes happening on WhatsApp, and that was, I would say, the ad hoc response phase, which lasted probably for 2 or 3 months. In the medium term, which we are currently passing through, what we have done is, of course, we have finished on our level the pre-university test, and the final examinations are currently going on entirely through the online method and the online technology. And we've seen that there has been a reasonable attendance of students, even from the ones who are living in the far-flung areas. So one is that assessments have gone online, and there was not a big challenge there. Second, in terms of teaching learning process, now we are gradually making a shift from an ad hoc utilizing of Zoom or any other platform to a proper LMS structure. Now, transitioning to a technology platform and investing in technology is a costly affair in the current times, because if you want to deliver quality, you will have to take care of the infrastructure of the platform, which should be of good quality. You will have to take care of the training, retraining and retraining of the faculty and trainers, because it is just not about transposing the physical classrooms into the online world, but looking at it from the pedagogical aspect. I mean, how do you compress a 60-minute lecture into a 25-minute lecture now that we are moving into online world, and you bring in more project work, more group discussions, and more ways to give out the credits? That is the thing which is taking out time, and it should take time, because it's an academic affair, and it's just not about the technology. And the third, having very well equipped studio facilities within the university campuses. We already had studios even before the crisis for delivering lectures and recording of the lectures, but now we are in the process of upgrading the studio facilities so that the lecture delivery and the recording of those lectures happen in a proper standardized format. So that was number 4. Having said that, in last 4 months, what I have realized is we as a country are still not ready to make that shift into an online delivery of teaching learning or even online assessments on a 100% scale. And yes, blended approach is what has been talked about. It's not a new term. It's been there for last 10 years, but that term is going to come to the fore. And if we are going to see more and more credits moving towards online learning from 20%, let's say, to the suggested 25 or 40%, I see that the blended approach, the appetite for consuming courses on an online medium, and flexibility for delivery of these credits, not just in the classroom hours, but beyond the classroom hours, will increase. But the challenge is folds. I would like to summarize in these two challenges. One is, how do we make the faculty and the trainers ready in their technology and in their mindset to actually make that shift? And there has been a lot of resistance across the board for making that shift, and many people are still assuming that this will die down in 3 months and we will come back to our own old ways. But some of it is going to change permanently, and we have to be ready for that. And second, more importantly, how do we drive the engagement with the students? When the technology where absent from the lectures, switching it on and not attending it properly, because this is how we will have to go on for some time to come. Finally, in terms of readiness, we are ready, and my sense is that at least the first semester, which is going to start around October or so, we have to completely be ready for 100% online system of teaching, learning, counseling, internships, personality development, and so on. And if the pandemic plays out more, we will have to probably be ready for one full year of academic session 2021 to be delivered and conducted online.
Thank you so much, for the insights and for sharing those specific points. So now that the context is set, I will have specific questions for each of the panelists so that we can make this discussion as rich as possible for our participants. Just a quick announcement. So unfortunately, Dr. Pankaj Mittalji could not join because she had an urgent meeting with the ministry she had to attend. So, she has messaged to be excused from the meeting. So we'll definitely miss her insights from the conversation. So moving on, my very specific question to Kuwar sir, and I know because he will give a very honest, straightforward answer. So it's a tough question which I want to ask you. Institutions are facing, I think there is a taboo to talk about money in education somewhere, right? People don't want to talk about it at all, but we don't understand at the end of the day, institution is also running on that. People are getting paid, fees have to be collected. So there is a very critical question, because I work personally with so many institutional leaders. I want to ask a very important question. Institutions are in a very uncertain time. Fees collections are getting delayed. Parents have lost jobs, so they are not in the position a lot of times to pay the salary. Some students are taking advantage of the situation. Government is forcing the organizations to pay full salaries. Institutions have to maintain a lot of infrastructure which is not getting utilized, like hostels, where institutions are there's a one-way cost happening. How are you handling it, and what would be your advice to other education leaders how to handle this crisis? So you are on mute. Yeah.
The only solution is hand holding. Whenever there is a crisis, that crisis is not of an individual, neither it is of an institution, nor of the parents. We have to understand one thing, that an institution is a complete ecosystem is there. We are not only paying salary to our faculty members, the institution is serving to thousands and thousands of people, either through employment or other opportunities, those who are living in the vicinity of that institution. But as this crisis is there, and this crisis, when people talk it a new normal, so generally I feel it is abnormal. What is new normal in that? Yes, we were looking for that education 4.0, 5.0, all those terms we were talking about. But it is abnormal. And we cannot adopt to an abnormal situation forever. Every abnormal is temporary. And if I look at social angle also, it is temporary. We have to handhold each other. At our institutions, what we did, I always believe that a straight communication, it helps a lot. We had to talk to all stakeholders. We had to talk to our faculty members. We had to talk to our students. We had to talk to the parents. We had to talk to everybody. And as you mentioned that government is forcing to pay full salary. Government is not forcing anybody to pay full salary. But our moral is forcing us to pay the salaries. And it must. So, these situations, they are temporary. And once you decide that I will hold the hand, people will come forward. I have not seen any student in our campus who was not having a genuine reason and they have not paid. Yes, there are people where parents have lost jobs, where there are crises, and we are understanding their issues. They are understanding the issue. So it will pass. I always believe in this thing. So this is one. Secondly, if you were an institution which was an island of excellence, which was not connected to the mainland, which was not concerned with the society, which was not thinking who is in your neighborhood, you never thought of them. You always believed with your closed doors, you are doing wonderful job. Then definitely you are going to be in crisis. But if you are an institution which is very well connected with the society, be it facilities which you have provided to the society at large, like you are aware, in Shobit University, we developed one SEIZ concept. This is a skill entrepreneurship innovation zone, which is when we are not using our infrastructure, we allow students coming from rural areas or those who cannot afford to go to even a university to come and use our labs free of cost. Yeah. And all our research, we see one parameter is not only that what impact factor of the research paper is there, we see what social impact of the research will be there. So when you are working in that way, so these crises, there are so many hands, invisible people around, those who come to support you. And they support you, they support your students, they support the complete ecosystem. And I have seen this wonderfully, this has given us a learning actually. When people are talking it as a crisis, I have taken it as an opportunity for experimentation, a lot of social experiments we did, and to learn a lot of new things. Like our examinations are over, our results are out, our new semester is on already, like with the running batches. Admissions are going on, and I believe more study in India will happen this year, at least for Indians, those who are planning to go out. So at least for them, study in India will be more there. It will benefit at least universities like ours, where more boys and girls will like to come and join. So there are so much positivity is there. If something financial issues are there, they are temporary. Let us handhold each other. And once we will handhold each other, this will pass.
Thank you, sir. So if I have to, summarize, I think what you said, we have to uphold humanity first, and bring in straight communication. All of us have our own challenges to make sure we communicate to each other in a straightforward way, so that there is better understanding. And it's a question of just time, and this shall pass too, as they say in Buddhism. So moving, connecting humanity. So Madhu ma'am, I have a question, and we all know that you have also been a teacher, and so a very specific question related to teaching with you. Teachers were, I think, in the most uncomfortable zone when this happened. And there are some of the best teachers who were very good at teaching in the classroom, interacting with the students. Suddenly they felt what's going on. They had those chills in front of the screen. A lot of them live in joint families. They could not find a private place to teach the students. They had their children around, who will keep disturbing, and there were a lot of that social I would say concerns around being on the screen. Ma'am, what would your advice be to teachers? We have a lot of participants today who are professors. How would you guide them to adopt this new online teaching, the new world? Because it's not going to go away now. Now that we have adopted it, I think we will continue to have parts of it going forward. So how will you guide the professors who are there in the session today?
Hemant, I think you asked me a very pertinent question, and it relates to me, very near to my heart. I started my teaching to my panelists. I wanted to tell that I started my teaching in '76. So it is already 44 years into this era of this teaching. It was always a challenge. I always tell to my teachers that whenever I'm talking to them, and I'm a teacher, being a teacher, I always talk to them which is very much pertinent to the teaching profession. So whenever you are going to the class, and normally in a class, the 60 students are sitting, and in school, if you see in college and universities, so it is a war-like situation, and there are two parties in that war. And one side of that, if it is a war between India and some country, so one side is a teacher, and the only, I can say that the thing to fight is chalk and duster and one blackboard. And if the opposite side of that war, you see the 60 students sitting in class with two eyes, so 120 people are observing you, and they are observing everything about you. So if you see that in one point of time when I'm teaching, more than 21 skills I'm using. So I'm writing on the blackboard, I am interacting with the students, I'm taking their answers back. I'm just seeing that whether they are physically present, but whether they are mentally present or not, and how I have to make my lesson very interesting. So, and that war says that 120 people are seeing you and all the skills, how you have your attire, how you are talking. So that was always a challenge. Now, this challenge has become more for my teachers and for all the teachers in this profession. Reason being that the parents have reached into their classroom. Because when the online sessions are there, you don't know that who all are observing your lessons. So that is a challenge. When we were talking about this with the teachers, that what were your fear? So they say that, madam, normally we were teaching in a class when only the students are there and they are my students. So I was very comfortable with them. Now, when it becomes online, so that challenge is different, and some have a fear of coming in front of the cameras because they are not the actors, they are not working in Bollywood, they are not working in the television serials, but they are just the teachers. And they were not, because 90% of the teachers have not done the B.Ed course or would be teachers course, so they were not trained. They knew that what to teach in a better manner, but how to teach was always a dilemma with them. So here it comes that they were not groomed for the teaching like this. But luckily in Chitkara, because we are a little bit very conscious about the technology from day one. So 4 years back, we started with the online sessions with teachers. So we forced them that please come out with your cocoon, that you have to work on a different platforms. So we have a Chitkara Radio 107.8 and we were having the studios. So that facilities were already there. What we asked them, come on their own. That was on a voluntary base. Started with this because we started with the MOOCs courses and we wanted them to upload this on the SWAYAM portal or the different portals. So that process we already started. We were having the studios. So some of them, I can't say that 100% of them were ready. 20% of them were ready for that. Now, what this faculty did that the 20% took the lead and they just mentored the other professors that it is not a problem. So you be relaxed. It is not going to happen. That it is just the same. That the only thing is that fear should not be there. So during that period, when I think that holy break was there, when this all started, it was in March. So when we were back on the campus and the students were to come, so we saw the situation in scenario that it is going to worsen this thing. So we 1 week we took all, we said together how the academic delivery has to be done, what can be the future, but we were not knowing that it will go so long, that 4 months, and already 4+ months are there. So, but it went off so good, and I'm very proud of, I think we all here in the panel are proud of our faculty members. They are the real warriors. I think in the teaching profession, they are the real warriors. We should be proud of them. The second people that who took it very positively were the art students. And the third were the parents. Of course, they were with us and they said that it is okay. And so that is why, that is the reason that things were moving so smoothly that we were able to take the final exams. As Sudhanshu sir also said that, I think Kumar sir also said that we are through with our final exams. The final year students have gone, and trainings are done, and we were talking to the industry was so positive. We all should be very thankful to the industry that they gave them the training sessions online, work from home, so it was not a problem, and they all were supporting the educational system. And I think we were getting the support from the teachers, from the students, from the faculty, from the stakeholders, all the stakeholders. I can give you one example. If you talk about the society, so we started, well said by Kumar sir, that previously we were talking about the patents, the research, that was very, very hardcore academic research. And now seeing this situation, that social scenario, and talking about the social research and how in social domain we have to give them the solutions of pandemic which is happening here. So during this session, during this period, 4 months, our professors, those who were into research, so because we have a department in Chitkara University is rescuing, because both the universities, one is Punjab and one is in Himachal Pradesh. So both the universities started working on the social impact of pandemic on the people and start doing the research, giving the solutions to the people. And nearby, because we have adopted the villages, so we talked to them that what are the problems faced by you? So they said that, can we get the solutions like this? So we have applied for 5 patents during these 4 months, where it is all and all giving the solutions to the society. So I think it has become a new normal, and it will part of our system if all things goes well and we are back, because we are very anxiously waiting for our students to be in the campus. Because when we go to the campuses and the students are not there, we are not enjoying it all. So when they will come back, we will try to give them the knowledge that with the previous system, you have to follow this new normal also, because it will be good for them, for the safety of them and safety of all of us. So I think as a teacher, I'm very passionate to meet students, but now I'm missing a lot. Online will work, but it can't work fully, because with technology, that personal touch, personal contact with the students is very, very important, which all the teachers are also missing. And we all are missing their presence in our campuses. I think that was the thing which gave us the new knowledge that how the future will be all hybrid learning. Future will be, I think all blended learning will work. It will not work only in the one model. So different models have to be followed. And I think Hemant knows well, we are using their platform, and we are very happy with Corpol that Hemant, you are doing a great job, very young entrepreneur, and giving good solutions to us. We are of that old age, and following your people like you, we are using for evaluation of our programs, we are using My Anatomy platform, and that is done also by one of our alumni. So we are using very different technologies to give the best to them. And I don't think so that there was any compromise done in teaching and learning processes during this period. So for that, I'm thankful to all the stakeholders.
Thank you, ma'am. We can see that extra energy in you when you talk about teaching. Shows the passion you have for the teaching, and I think that's something very well known to all the education stakeholders. Quickly, Sudhanshu, Madhu madam spoke about, it's like so taking the word war from there. We know that Ben Horowitz from the Andreessen Horowitz, the iconic venture fund, speaks about that there are peacetime CEOs and there are wartime CEOs. And peacetime CEOs don't know how to run the companies in wartime. Wartime CEOs don't know how to run a company in peacetime. And very rare, CEOs know both the skills. So tell me, what do you have in your plans, for this wartime situation, in terms of what is it that you are planning to do differently that institutions can take away from this session? 2 or 3 specific, I would say, points where you are planning something different. And obviously not to spin your secret, I would say, but something that you can, share publicly, what institutions can take away from Bennett University.
Yeah, I think there is no secret about this, and there is nothing unique to be done. Okay. The way I look at it is, so times change, you need to change. Yeah. So I typically tell my team, I said, no, you can be passionate about what you do. Like Dr. Madhu is, I mean, you said it rightly, her passion is visible all across the screen when she's talking about teaching. But getting emotional about something is not what is going to work, whether it's wartime or whether it's peacetime. So if you were to look at it, so what is it we are going to do differently? I don't think there is anything greatly different that we are going to do, except one of the points which very clearly stands out is taking away this whole fear in the mind of teachers, that when you teach face to face versus when you are teaching, through technology, is something drastically different. It is not. Okay. I think the best communicators in the world can be no one else except the teachers. So I'll take it in a different way rather than calling it a war. I have huge respect for teachers. You have these 60 and 100 goons sitting in the class who are either pinching each other, or they're eating from their tiffin box, or they are, as ma'am said, they are physically there, mentally not there. This art which the teachers have of holding those 100 kids together, is tremendous. It's tremendous. I mean, I've been fortunate to have attended some of the sessions of my teachers during my time in BITS Pilani, where practically, and I think it happens everywhere now, you cannot have more than 60 students registered to a faculty in your timetable. Right. So we would have two timetables. We would have a timetable which was the registered timetable, and we'd have a timetable which was the attending timetable. And there were these teachers we knew who used to be given the largest of rooms in BITS Pilani, because everyone knew for years together that there would be 250 kids sitting, falling out of windows, falling out of doors, sitting on the podium, the platform for the podium. Teacher would have not more than 5 feet to move around. So I think it is that art which a teacher needs to get online now. So that is something which we are focusing on. What we are also trying to do is we are trying to make it in a way where, or let's say, I would say what we are doing differently is that we are mentally tuning ourselves not to get affected by a lot of noise, let me call it like that, which gets made, when you compare online teaching to physical teaching. And I'm sure a lot of people sitting over here would have been receiving a lot of mails from students and all that, touching upon the point which you said, jobs are lost. Now, we don't know jobs are lost now, right? And therefore, how can you charge what you're charging for physical classes as to an online classes? See, teaching is teaching. Yeah, this is an investment. You're not looking at higher education for yourself or your child as an expense. If you are, then I'm really sorry about it. But it's an investment. If you're investing for the quality of knowledge that is going to come. It makes no difference whether the knowledge comes through online mode or whether it comes through physical mode. There's no difference in that. And I think people need to understand that. A teacher will not compromise on what the teacher is teaching just because the teacher is now going to teach on a computer screen. Or the student is going to gain less knowledge while he's online versus when he's in class. In fact, the positive side to it is that today the parent knows whether the kid is actually attending the class or not. When he's on campus, no parent has a clue whether the student is actually in the class or not in the class. Right? So I think differently what is to be done is to, one, break our own mindset. And as what Kuvarji was saying, I mean, there is nothing called new normal. Life is as is. It's just breaking our mindsets, getting out of the way what we've been used to doing, and continue doing what we are doing with passion in a different environment. That's basically the key thing that I think needs to be done.
Perfect. Point well taken, Sudhanshu. So just a quick question, to Siddharth. there is, now that we have started the online, I think that's something in the last 3 months, like you beautifully mentioned, you've already transitioned from just a online class to a more integrated learning management system. But at the same time, institutions are also preparing, because like Madhu madam said, that everybody is desperate to get their students back, see those faces, that noise, that, that discussions, and then people move on. How are you making sure that the campuses are going to be safe when the students are planning to come back? Parents have anxieties that, can I send my student back? There are several universities we talk to and they say, parents बोल रहे हैं नहीं हम बच्चे को नहीं भेजेंगे, आप online ही कीजिए. So how are you ensuring, and how are you going to communicate and get the trust from the parents that yes, you can send your children to our campus?
Yeah, so I think I mean, all of us, it's a question for not just, the higher education administrators, but the entire education sector, the schools, the standalone training centers which operate on the, side on the vocational and the skills domain, and many other consumer facing, establishments, that how do you get the consumer confidence back to have this physical kind of interaction going on. And so unfortunately there is no shortcut. I don't see that just by communicating that we are actually following all the guidelines and we have all the things and norms in place, parents will actually suddenly take us on our word, and the next day they'll start sending the children. But what we can certainly do is at least, and what we have been doing is to at least show that the entire team and the leadership from the top to the deans to the faculty and everybody else is actually working fine in the institutions, be it for delivery of the lectures or doing some of their other work. Some of the new research projects around ICT which has been generated recently, and conducting that. So we've been trying to show that at least your team is back in the institution and they are doing fine, and we are taking good care of the team. And similarly, we would be taking all the precautions and the care once you all also step back into the institution. But having said that, it is going to be, my sense is it is going to be a staggered approach, wherein students from the non-affected or the low affected areas, if the campus happens to be in a vicinity where the pandemic, then at least the students of that vicinity will start coming in first, and then the students from the remaining parts of the state, and then the students from outside the state join back. So it will be a phased manner. But just one mantra from the institution side is communicate, communicate, communicate. So we are taking all the pains to communicate whatever we can to bring the confidence back, whatever we can to show to the parents that significant effort is being taken by teachers, by the university leadership to continue the teaching learning process. A significant effort is being taken by the TPO office to organize a lot of industry webinars, a lot of industry talk series, virtual internship offers which have been given, and in a few cases virtual placement drives also. So in a nutshell, getting the confidence back onto each part of the value chain of the student life cycle, placements, teaching, learning, and the entire readiness of the hostels. We have to communicate that the hostels have been sanitized, the infrastructure has been changed, it has been upgraded. So the auxiliary infrastructure about hostels, the gyms, sports rooms, the buses, all of them also will have to be taken care of apart from the teaching learning process to get the confidence back, because ultimately it's the entire package which the student is coming for apart from just the teaching learning process, and we need to get the confidence back on the entire package apart from just the teaching learning process.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the insights. Sahil, Rishi Hood, is in the process of launching some very new age programs in creativity, in the leadership, policy, so many different areas. Is there any change of plans because maybe the industrial landscape is changing? The opportunities students would be exploring from an employment perspective, maybe 3 years down the line, 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line is changing. So what I would say areas do you think students would find more employment? And as Rishi Hood University, what are your thoughts? What kind of new programs do you think would find more mainstream attention from students and parents going forward?
Thanks, Hemant. So what has happened is, I think by coincidence, the kind of programs we chose are actually getting more prominence post-COVID. So for example, we have a school in entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is definitely going to pick up because people have realized that stable and straightforward jobs are not the future for all of us. While there will be a lot of jobs available, we will have to develop an entrepreneurial mindset in whatever job we continue on, and definitely if we want to build our startup. Then we have a program in creativity, which again is something, not just COVID, but in the overall light of the technological advances that are happening, human work will more get focused towards creative areas where machines can't do much. Then we have healthcare. So healthcare is going to be very big now after COVID, issues like public health and health management. So COVID has in a way strengthened our plans rather than disturbing them. In fact, given this is our first year, we're not yet so dependent on operations, right? We are in a startup phase, so we are just giving us one more year to stabilize things. And when we started designing the entire concept of Rishi Hood, we created a plan for 80 years. So we said that this is our plan for the 21st century, and let's do it. So COVID is like once in a century event. So it cannot, we cannot make our plans based on an event like COVID. So our plans continue, and we have to just adapt to situations like this.
Thank you, Sahil. And I see, Ravi is here to tell that we are almost running out of time. But now that, he was supposed to moderate and I was supposed to speak, so he has to give me 5 more minutes, for taking the moderation. I think it's important at this stage to be positive. And in fact, thank you, Ravi, for moderating, letting me moderate, because, this is a panel I would cherish, with so many of the leaders I have had the opportunity to know and work with. So it's like an opportunity to interact. So I would like to conclude the session with one quick positive thought from all our fellow panelists. A positive thought that you would want to quickly share with all the people in the session. So we will start. Yeah, we will start with Madhu Madam, Kuwarji.
Hemant, first, I think I must give the best wishes from all of us to Sahil for his new venture, because you are very young into this profession, and I think our wishes are always with you, young people like you. The second thing is because it is be positive. It's very easy to say be positive, but I'm seeing the young students when I'm interacting with them that it is becoming very, very difficult for them to be positive, because they were not very much ready for 4 months in one room, in one single family, interacting with the same family. I think that was a challenge with them. They are very young and they are into 21st century. They are not like us, those who are living in the joint families. So for them, there is a request from the educationists like us that first thing is, if you are be positive and you have any problem, mentally you are disturbed, please talk to your mentor. And we have, in all the universities, we have mentor-mentee system where the 15 students or less than 15 students are given to one mentor where they can talk to them. And in Chitkara University, we are regularly talking to them, and we are making sure that every mentor should talk to mentee to make them mentally balanced. It's not the time that how they are achieving in their academics, because more than that, it is very important for them to understand that this is a time to be balanced and not to be disturbed about what is going to happen, because they are not coming to the campuses, they are not interacting with the peers, they can't go out because the parents say that it is not safe to go out. So I think suggestions and the request from all of us to the students, especially to the students, is that we are always there. We are, because parents and teachers both are there for their betterment, and always talk to us if you find any problem. Don't do anything which is wrong for you or wrong for the society. And be safe, stay healthy, and stay creative. I always say stay creative, because this is the time to take care of your creativity. Whatever you are not done previous times, you are not having fine time because you were in the campuses going there for 7, 8, 10 hours. Now you have full time with you. You are attending only 3 to 4 hours or 5 hours of online sessions, but other time is for you. You go for music classes, you do any hobby classes, go to kitchen, not seeing that you are a boy, you can't go to kitchen, because now the whole, both husband and wives are working. So in future life, you have also to work if your wife is working. So please do something in kitchen, take help from your mother. And I think this is a time. And we all should, and well said by Siddharth, that it's a time for healthcare programs, and they can do any programs in Coursera or edX or any program where they can do online certifications and small courses. For example, I did because I have interest in interior, so I did sustainable development, buildings of that who can be sustained. So these type of courses will help you out to come out of this crisis. And I think these are the best wishes to all the students and the parents. Try to support your friend.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Kuvarsa, you made a beautiful, I think painting in the spirit. So, your thoughts, positive thoughts to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, remain engaged, as I believe you saw it, that I made a painting. I'm not a painter, but I painted and it came up very well. Secondly, which is very important, Dr. Chitkara also mentioned, Ministry of HRD has recently launched a platform called Manodarpan. It is a psychological helpline. And in every university, like in Shobit University, in March itself, we launched a psychological COVID helpline for our students, for other stakeholders from our Center for Psychology and Human Behavior. And I have seen that it helped a lot of people around. So remain positive. This is one thing. As for the students, Dr. Chitkara has already mentioned that they have to remain positive and all those things. And for my fraternity, for educationists, for institution builders, again, there is a tension, no doubt. So it reminds me of Honorable Prime Minister recently when he was talking to the industry. He said, remember 5 important vowels, A, E, I, O, U. So they are adaptability, efficiency, inclusivity, opportunity, and universalization. So I believe these 5 vowels, if we will remember and we will adopt, so they will remove our tension also. So important is adaptability. We have to adapt with the system. Times are good. This is a very temporary phase indeed. It will pass on. So we all are very positive, and I'm sure that through this platform, this positivity will move further. I'm thankful to Dr. Ravi Gupta also for creating, generating, and spreading this positivity to the people around. Thank you very much.
Dhanyawad. Thank you so much.
I think Sahil, your quick positive thoughts with all of us.
I'll take a little history-based approach to positivity. So this is a very temporary phase, as Kumarji was saying. In a lifespan of an average lifespan of 75 years, this is just a 1-year thing that has affected us. So there's no reason to be non-positive or negative about it. In fact, if we look at the history, if we were born 100 years ago, 200 years ago, if we think that compared to those times, we are in a much fortunate situation. Otherwise, we would be in a British colony. So I think we all must thank ourselves that these are great times to be positive. Otherwise, we would not even have been able to set up a university, let alone have a panel discussion technologically. So these are very good times.
Thank you. Sudhanshu, your thoughts, please.
A couple of them. So just taking on from what Sahil was saying, the best way to keep positive is to actually think कि इससे बुरा क्या हो सकता था जो नहीं हुआ. But having said that, so I think two things which we must keep in mind. One is, see, we have to learn to be happy with ourselves. Okay. We have to all learn to enjoy ourselves as me. We typically end up, seeking solace in being in company of people, and we need outer validation of we are good, bad, or ugly. The day we learn to be happy with ourselves, I don't think we will ever have a point where we are in the negativity zone. One message I would like to share with everyone, and we do it at our home on a day-to-day basis, is, this whole lockdown period and, these quarantines, and I've been through a self-quarantine twice. Once when our daughter came back from US and once when I traveled out and came back. There are lots of things we have learned that we can do without, which at one point of time we thought were essential for us. And we have done a lot of things in those self-quarantine days or in the lockdown periods, for which we were always dependent on people outside. Once this opens up, we should learn and remember those things which we did, those things which we enjoyed during this period of time, and not forget that, and not fall back into the trap of materialism after this, as I say. And Hemant has heard these dialogues from me a fair number of times, so he's in a way tired of hearing all of that. But just learn to be happy with yourself is my message to everyone, and that's to me, my life has taught me that's the best way to be happy and to be positive.
Perfect. Thanks, Sudhanshu. Siddharth, your concluding positive thoughts with all of us.
Yes, just two things. One, on the professional front, since I take all of us as social entrepreneurs, this is the best time for social enterprises to make all the, to bring to life all the experiments, as also Madhu ma'am said, all the creativity, and make all those experiments utilizing this time of the next 6 months, and make those much awaited changes in our own institutions first, so that we move towards a greater autonomy, a greater innovation driven higher education ecosystem. Second, this is the time to get innovation to the forefront. This is probably a once in lifetime opportunity to get the innovation to the forefront from faculties, from deans, from anybody who's willing to contribute to take the education institution to the next level. And on the personal front, again, once in a lifetime opportunity to cherish all the times, we are getting to spend with the family, with children, and pursue some of the hobbies or pursue some of those forgotten courses. This time might not come back anytime again in a lifetime. So I would just say, cherish whatever we are getting as a blessing in disguise currently.
Thank you, Siddharth. And if Ravi allows, and he loves Shairi, so I would just love to end this with the couplet, which says कि क्यों करता है तू हर मोड़ पे सवाल तू है राही, क्यों करता है हर मोड़ पे सवाल तू है राही, रास्ता बनाने वाले ने मंजिल भी बना रखी है. So I think let's stay positive. It's just another turn in the journey. Let's stay focused. And my gratitude to all the speakers to take out time and allow me to facilitate this discussion. Over to you, Ravi. Thank you to ILET especially for creating this opportunity.
Sure. And let me convey my thanks to all our eminent speakers. I think you all are doing great service to the society. Thank you, Kuwar Shekharji. I follow you on the social media, and every day you never fail to inspire us. So thank you, Dr. Madhu Chetkara ji. Thank you for being here. Your kind words here. Siddharth, thanks for joining us. Thank you. And Sahil, congratulations again for your new university which is starting these times, and all the best to you. And Sudhanshu Verma ji, I heard you today, I think first time, and I was truly inspired by listening to you. And Hemant, as usual, you're a great moderator. Thank you so much. So with this, we will end here. Namaskar, and thank you everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.